There he is. Look at this handsome bastard. I'm going to do this. I'm going to do this.
Put me in there and then do this and do this. Hey.
Me and Coach. How are you, sir?
I'm good. I'm good. I obviously there's a lot of emotions about what we just saw. And I'm seeing it everywhere, right? I'm sure you are too.
Well, hit me right off the bat with your feelings, please. What are you feeling?
All right. I tell you what, I think the first flubs were really rough for Biden when he, because he was here's what happened. This is clear. Like if you follow the Twitter feed from Biden campaign, he had statements he was going to tee up, and then they had the sort of tweet ready to go when he gets to that point. So he was kind of following a script, and you could tell by his he kept going number one and number two. He was doing his breakdown of those things. He was making his debate notes and that kind of stuff, which trying to stick to that too much, I think ate into his concentration, ate into his comfort level. And I think it was a mistake as far as how they, sort of prepped him. The interesting
thing format
was,
didn't help that either because he only had so much time, and
Yeah, that doesn't bother me so much. It's again when Biden, Biden was at his strongest a couple of times when he was just directing one particular moment on stuff. The idea that there's this kind of flash follow up on policy. There's so many policies. It's a juggle. And you could tell he was actually trying to do it. Whereas Trump was just stump speeching. And to some degree, that will benefit him with a crowd because his voice was clearer and he was being stumpy. But the weird part was when they got to the golf thing and they were kind of arguing golf game, and that was the oddest moment of the whole thing, was the fact that Trump went there, like erased probably 10 of Biden's worst flubs at that point, because they're like, what the hell is this guy on about, right? And ultimately, it'll be a wash as far as the voters go. There'll be some people who are like, for the next 3 weeks, they're going to be, he's too old to be in office, and there'll be a story about it, he has a cold, and that's what caused it or whatever, but he's fine. And then everybody's like, well, what if he gets a cold when something big is happening? And that will be the conversation for the next couple of weeks. Trump in and of itself, like,
sorry, go ahead. No, I was going to say, I was surprised to see that Joe Biden like retorted with the golf stuff. Like he came back with his handicap. It's like, just let Trump talk about the golf shit and look like an asshole talking about golf shit at a presidential fucking debate. Why you would go there and talk about your how you got your handicap down to a 6 or an 8 while you were vice president. Like nobody gives a shit.
Right.
Like, nobody gives a shit because hearing Trump say that shit, he sounds like an idiot. So I was surprised to see him kind of retort with anything on that. So, but sorry to interrupt.
Well, no. I agree. I think they also you could see two strategies happening that he was trying to stick to. And it was Bob Cesca tweeted early that he was overcoached, and he's absolutely right. And so they spent, I would argue, too much time kind of prepping for this when they didn't need as much. Trump was just going to come out and say his blather and his bullshit, and that would be that. And Biden was going to come out and kind of like bang him with facts, which is in this, they were like, okay, this is that kind of format. This will be like an old fashioned debate where, a gentleman debater hitting the facts against this like pugilist moron. And that was the strategy. And they kind of overcommitted to that strategy.
They got too cute with it. They got too fancy. They, instead of just coming out and laying down the facts with the ammunition that they have laying in their lap, not only with the accomplishments of the Biden administration, but also with the faults and the negativities and the cases surrounding the Trump and Trump's organization. I think you're right. I think it was absolutely trying to be too scripted, and it just, his first flubs kind of threw him off, and that kind of threw off the rest of the. I think the second segment was his strongest, and I was a little, I don't know, shocked, or I was disappointed at his closing. He didn't mention a bunch of important stuff that I thought he could have mentioned in that time. It wasn't very strong worded or sounding to me.
Well, and that's the other thing too, is Trump's was just kind of like a recap of sort of his last gripe that he had on his mind. There was, and I would say for both of them, there was no closing argument in this debate at all. It was very peculiar. Trump's people are going to argue they don't need a second debate. And so they're going to, after this one, they're going to say he won because he was loud. And they're going to argue that we don't want another one. And the Biden people can say, oh, he's just, he's afraid to argue on the facts. And Biden had a cold. And that's that. And, that lead up, whatever, that we went. Yeah.
Another thing is Biden is inherently bad with numbers. You know what I mean? So to stick him out there and have him try to recite a ton of these numbers, I mean, he's bad with million and billion and mixing them up, which is whatever it is, what it is. But you'd think the people surrounding him would try to give him talking points that don't so much involve specific, very specific numbers that he has to remember.
Right. Well,
you know what I mean?
Yeah, but I think that's playing into the ages thing. I think that's what they're trying to do is like, you need to show your command of numbers. One of the best things about the last debate in 2020 was when he cited the 114,000, I think it was, uncapped wells part of it, which was one of the like, oh, he's got that on the top of his head and Trump has no numbers on the top of his head. He's just like best of best or whatever. I will say that on retrospect, like, because watching it, we're all tense and we're going, oh, come on. I have a feeling on the second watching, which is not what you get. You got to, because the second chance at a first impression, it won't be as tense in those moments, right? And because they seem like they're going on forever. And Trump gets, again, I have to say, Biden in this position where he had a raspy voice from the start, clearly. I was expecting him to clear his throat. It was clearly something going on with his throat for the whole thing. So he was very soft-spoken during it, which will, again, be one of their things. Like he had a cold and, he had laryngitis and he was dealing with that. And, we're dealing with a lot of stuff. And he was up last night talking to overseas. Well, there's a lot.
Which might explain the whole Camp David week, too, trying to rest him up for,
right, because he was sick, right, as opposed to prepping, right, which is entirely possible. That said, he gave Trump such a layup with that. The early flubs and the soft voice. And I'm amazed that Trump fucked it up. That he still got flustered and still we had H2O and we bought a certain kind of dog. And he still managed these, Biden was trying to speak too fast. And he was like, am I running out of time? He was very aware of the 2 minutes. 2 minutes is a long fucking time. Ask any open micer. But it feels like a short time when someone describes it to you. If you tell somebody you got 2 minutes to tell me what you're doing, in your mind, you're thinking 90 seconds. And I got to get it clear in the first 45 seconds. That's how you're thinking about it. And you
not only that, but they were cutting them off so cleanly without letting them finish their thought that you want to make sure that you finish your whole thought and not leave it hanging where your strongest point, your last statement never gets to be heard because they got cut off. So I'd rather have it where they say, okay, you get another 30 or 40 seconds. Do you want to say anything else type thing than, have it get cut off because Biden's a nice guy. Like he will stop when Dana Bash or Jake Tapper started to speak.
Before,
you know what I mean?
Other debates. Yeah. In 2020, that happened in the debates as well. There were the points where he seemed sort of at his weakest to the Trump world is when he was being deferential to whoever was there.
Because he did that whole thing tonight where he kind of froze where Dana Bash started talking. I'm sure right wing will try to spin that into something,
Right. And Trump's whole thing about making faces during the debate will carry it. And by the way, they're going to be printing shots of Biden flustered at the end of the things. That's going to be their primary focus for the next 6 weeks until
he gave them shots.
Trump's
though.
Conviction.
Let's be honest. He gave them a few shots by him looking down some of the time. That's a couple of times in the chat. I wanted to write, "Look up, Joe. Look up." You know what I mean? Look at the camera.
Right.
Because he was giving them what he's doing is he's thinking about what Trump's saying at the time, kind of jotting down what he wants to rebut. And I understand that, but he has to understand how he's being portrayed on camera.
Yeah,
I think a little more.
I agree. Not as media savvy about it as he should have been in that regard. And again, and you'll see this if there is a second debate, you'll see chin up Joe, and he'll only respond to the last thing Trump said, because that's what he should have done. Go in there, whatever the topics are, have your talking point. And don't rush it. Instead of having 3 points, have one. Just talk about that one full point. And I think the only real the biggest loss, I think there was obviously again the soft voice and the stammer at the beginning was going to be rough. But at the end, he should have hit the Roe v. Wade aspect of it, harder. That should have been his closing argument. And it's going to be there. And by the way, the law part of it is still going to be there. They're still going to push it out. And, the viewership and all that kind of stuff will play a part in this. People will make a decision about him being old and all this. That's going to be the story for the next 24 hours. And everybody's going to be wigging out that he's too old, blah, blah, blah. That in and of itself will fade as soon as Trump has another blather fest when he gets sentenced. And Biden has another, can get out there and give a speech or something like that where he's, back together, as it were. It'll be less of a thing, but they're going to use this. They're going to definitely use this. I can't, future.
Knowing how important the first debate is if there are going to be a string of debates, and if not, how important the one and only debate is, why Roe v. Wade would not be the main focus in the closing is beyond me. I have absolutely no idea or reason for it. It doesn't make any sense to me.
I'll tell you exactly why. All the polls going around right now that the economy is the most important thing on people's minds. The economy is a very numbers heavy topic. If you actually have successes, it's not if you don't. If you're Trump, you can just go, we had the greatest economy, which is BS. But you can say it a bunch of times and people will fondly remember that life was easier before COVID, not during COVID or how you handled it. Not that we were headed into a recession before COVID. They're not going to remember that. So what he can say is we had the best thing ever and we had the best thing ever, which is not true at all. And Biden's best moments were, there's not a single, that was, I've never heard so much malarkey in all my life. It's all lies. Every time he would break away from what Trump said, that was just all lies. That was his best moments. But his transition from the idea that blah, 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 when he's trying to get his thoughts together for where he wanted to go first, came across as an in that regard. Don't bother to say it, just grab whatever he's doing. And again, they had loaded it seems like they had preloaded tweets to go with his talking points because they were coordinating this. And you can see him pop up in Twitter right at the, almost before right, in some cases, right?
Right.
And that's not the way you do a debate. It's a way you manufacture hit lines for ads later because you don't think anybody's going to watch the debate. And that's not how it was going to work, in that regard. And I think watching, again, his soft voice was probably the biggest liability right out of the gate. But there was that, again, he's only 4 years younger than me and completely what was it? The quote was, he's 4 years younger than me and completely, I forget what
incompetent,
the phrase was.
I think he said.
Yeah. He's incapable of, right.
Something like that. Yeah.
Yeah. And again, I should be able to quote it directly if it was launched well, but partly it's just, is sort of breathiness. So those should land better. In that regard.
You mentioned earlier that if there is another debate that Biden would focus more on focusing on the last thing that Trump was saying, right? Where I think that ties in a lot tonight on how the fact checking or lack thereof was being done, and Biden knowing that and then feeling the need to try to rebut every single one of the lies that may have been in the previous talking point.
That's what a Gish Gallop is for, and that's all Trump does is Gish Gallop. And the problem with a Gish Gallop is that it's a Gish Gallop. You have this issue where they say 7 lies, you rebut 1, and it gives the listener the assumption that the other 6 must have been true. That's the purpose of it. And
but do you think CNN failed a little bit in their responsibility in making sure the American people got factual information and aren't fending for themselves, so to speak? I mean, my chat, at least, it was huge in the chat saying, "Where's the fact checks? Where's the fact checks?" And I was saying, listen, you don't have to stop the candidates. You can at least let them finish what they were saying, and you should have a team or an AI or something set up at this point where you can be like, okay, at least this is factually incorrect. This is objectively not true. Biden, would you like to respond? Type thing, and that's at least the American people would know that much. We didn't even get that. We didn't get anything on screen. I mean, even an on-screen pop-up type thing wasn't allowed, I guess. I don't know. It seemed like
I think,
it seemed like a lot of what Trump said, even though we know it's stumpy, other people that aren't as politically active and involved and see what he says that much, it's going to look that much better to them because there was no, rebuttal, as Donald Trump would say.
It, right. Well, that's why I think Biden's, their comeback on each chunk of it was just all lies. I think was a smart move in general. What I would have preferred was instead of saying the idea that and trying to transition from what they actually asked him and pivot into this when they ask you the same question after they've done this. The better way to handle somebody who's gish galloping is just go, that's all lies. Can you remind everybody what the question was again? Because I want the viewers to know exactly what you asked him. I can answer your question, but say it again exactly as you want it, and I'll give you my answer. And that gives you a moment to think about it and gather your thoughts if you need to, because that was just a friggin' mess, especially like climate change. Climate change, Biden gave a solid answer on climate change, but with a scratchy, breathy kind of voice, and it just doesn't sound commanding, right? There were a lot of like eggs that Trump tried to throw. And again, talk about a dude who can fuck up a free lunch. But there was so much of like he could have dunked on Biden so hard with the stammers that he had. There was one moment where he's like, I don't even know what he said or something like that. But yeah, go ahead.
Will he get credit from some people though? Say independently. Will they give him credit? Will they think he was more restrained in a way for not doing that? Do you know what I'm saying? I know we're not going to think that, but could that have been a tactic, you think? I doubt so. I doubt it.
No, he did not. I mean, obviously, there's that idea that you don't kick somebody when they're down. Trump's never been above that in his life. I think he was trying to he was too busy like listening and trying to figure out what he was going to say next. Right? That's the issue. Right. I personally think again, policy stuff will wash its way out, and there'll be the arguing on both sides of this. But I was amazed. I actually was genuinely amazed that especially early on, Trump started to fade halfway through and Biden kind of got his steam halfway through. So there's this sort of transition over, but they were both kind of a mess. Overall, both candidates were a mess. Trump was, stump speech and lying his ass off, and Biden was trying to get too much stuff out, and he had a raspy voice. Like those two things are going to be more like a criticism of these are the two candidates that are blah, blah, blah. That'll be the bigger narrative across the board. Will it give RFK Jr. a bump? No. It's not going to help him at all. And again, if he was on there, his voice would have made Biden's voice sound better. And he sounds like that all the time. So,
you know what else looked to be effective that Biden did? And I don't know if he meant to do this or if it was just a natural reaction that he had. Yeah, that was a good line. And just not laughing and audibly laughing and then saying things, even though his mic couldn't be heard, even though we couldn't hear him, Donald Trump could still hear his responses, right? Yes. Or he could still look over and hear him giggling or laughing at. And then there was a few times that took Donald Trump off his game, off his answer, and he he looked over at Joe, and then he that's when it gets him off. So I think that's something that, looking back on it, if I was Biden's team, I would say, okay, even though the American people aren't really hearing what you're saying, we can see you on camera, we can see if you're laughing and you think something's just ridiculous just by your laugh and the facial expressions you're making. So keep getting under his skin, you kind of thing. You know what I mean? It's like, fuck it.
Well, yeah, and again, I think in the contrast, the Biden team and Biden in particular are trying to be the reassuring candidate. Subtle and smart and real accomplishments. And I do a debate taking notes and this like an old fashioned 60s debate, and it isn't necessary. That's not, people already got that part of it. What you got to come out there and Biden's thing should have been just being relaxed with his own accomplishments. That's it. The two things that they should have focused on was, don't try to stack a bunch of things. Again, I would argue that, and this will probably happen at the next debate, because maybe Trump will be itching to do the next one. And that's when the shit'll hit the fan. You know what I mean?
Right. Well,
because
there's a point where a soldier has just enough ammunition that he needs to go into battle, and then there's a point where he has so much ammunition that it weighs him down and he can't make it into battle. And tonight, I just
that's
think
exactly
that
right.
Joe Biden had
So-
too much ammunition and he didn't know what to pull from or where. And again, the way it was formatted, in my opinion, didn't really give him the opportunity to kind of expand on giving talking points that weren't necessarily asked in the specific question. You know what I mean? Because they hit the certain times and the mic getting cut off right at the end.
Yeah. I think there's also, again, working expectations. And I think, being an actor, I've been in situations where there are too many development executives and not enough writers in the room. And you're getting dumb ideas from around the table, and it's hard to parse the good ones from the bad ones until somebody, on your own. In this particular instance, I think one of the notes he was probably getting to is that you're old and you're slow, and they're going to go with slow. So if you can just prattle stuff out, if you can just hit them with a bunch of stuff, that's the wrong tactic in this situation. He could have paced himself slower than Donald Trump's speech, not rush it. And if you run out of time, pick it up later and go. And he literally could have come out and said, by the way, excuse my voice, I have a touch of laryngitis, but that's fine. You're allowed to do that. And that would have, by the way, that alone, I was like, I tweeted earlier, I was like, a lozenge would save this debate for Biden. But also, if he'd have just said that at the very beginning, part of my voice, I have a sore throat. That would have, that would have eliminated 80% of that issue right away. His acknowledgement is, again, this is a stand-up thing, but if you can't pull a Ted Bundy on stage. If you walk on stage with a cast on your arm, you got to make jokes about the cast, or everybody stares at it and never hears a word you're saying. And the same thing is true of Biden's raspy voice. Mm-hmm. That said, he should know this at this point, but I think there's so much, again, everybody was riding on how big this was and the pressure of it. But you could clear around the table that everybody's like, you need to bang, 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 bang. You have all these things in your head, you know them. And I think he tried to shove them all in, he tried to overstack the barrel, as it were, on the cannon.
Well, I think the thing I find myself saying the most when Joe Biden is talking, honestly, if I'm being honest with everybody, is just slow down. Take your time. Yeah. We understand, I don't know if that's a side effect or him trying to overcompensate for his speech impediment. Yes. And if it is, I apologize. I'm not trying to make fun of it, but that's what I find myself saying. It's just, I would rather him make mistakes being slower and more, more easily heard and understood than being perfect, but saying everything perfect in his mind and then at really fast pace type of thing. I don't know. It just, that's what I find myself saying, is just slow down. You got the points, you got the facts, you have the ammunition in your belt, you have everything that you need. All you have to do is now it's just a presentation thing almost. You know what I mean? It's like you have the goods in your bag. Now you just got to figure out how to present it to the American people in a way that makes you likable and gets your point across and lets them know that you have been a consequential president. You have done. I mean, remember when Donald Trump was saying there'd be no July 4th, there'd be no Thanksgiving, there'd be no graduations, there'd be no, what happened to all that? Has anybody sent a memo or a letter at their house saying your graduation's been canceled because of Joe Biden or that type of shit?
That also goes, so that also goes to the hellscape idea that Trump went into. We're a declining nation and all this stuff. And Biden's, I think, his brightest moment was, where he defended America and our military and nobody wants to screw with us, which I thought was his best locked solid thing. Like that, as far as, having obviously a moment they had worked on, and he recited it kind of perfectly and he meant it. That came out the best. There's so many details, like the biggest part of the Roe v. Wade flub, I thought the best is, and this would be the only thing they have to focus on, is that I'm going to restore Roe v. Wade. And there are no doctors in this country that are talking about killing a baby after it's born. This man is a maniac. That's all you had to say.
Well, that point, I was going to say, that's why I brought up that point that he got away with. I feel like, even though there was some pushback on it from Biden, I still feel like that point, and the flying, people coming in from insane asylums and prisons. I mean, the fact that you can get away with saying that on CNN in a 2024 presidential debate is fucking asinine to me. It's fucking ludicrous. I mean, I know Joe said there's no data to support that, and fine, he got the pushback in to say it's ridiculous, but it's more ridiculous than what the reaction was. Like it is absurd to say. I mean, look at the population. The prison populations in Central and South America have exploded. Do you know what I mean? So it's like it just factually looking at those numbers alone can prove or disprove what the fuck Donald Trump is saying. So the fact that these news anchors were either instructed to or not able to off their own head, or they didn't have a team behind them to say, okay, I know from my reporting that I've done, I don't even need the fact checkers. That's just horse shit, and that's just ridiculous. Or at the very least, do you have any data to support that? Would have been great, and he would have had nothing to say after that, and it would have proved the same point.
Well, again, in the working of the refs before the whole debate, Trump basically guaranteed there would be no fact checking by pre-accusing them of bias. So CNN would default to not doing anything about it. Right. And Biden was so concerned about getting his facts straight in comparison that he was kind of rushing to get those things out. And he would say billions instead of millions. But he corrected himself. That was the other thing, is that he didn't, in a bunch of these areas, say, billions and stick to it. He said it. And it was interesting. He said thousands and thousands of like dead in Ukraine, for example, when tens of thousands would be the number, or hundreds of thousands would be the number. Russia's lost hundreds of thousands of people. Like, that's a shocking number. Thousands and thousands doesn't even cut it as far as the number goes. But again, it's a war zone, and maybe there's a reason why they're holding back their awareness of what the actual numbers are. Blah blah blah. Like, there's no reason for it. He could simply.
I think he said 500,000, but he got cut off at the end, if I remember correctly. If we're talking about the same point in that one, I think he realized that he fucked up by saying thousands instead of the actual, tens of thousands.
He said 500,000. Yes, he did. As they were going to the end, and it managed to get out, which is fine. But again, his voice was so worn out, they didn't get to that. Now, is there a moment tomorrow where they go, it turns out he has the flu. He's taking 2 days off. He's, the president's health is just fine, but he caught it the day before and while we were at Camp David, and he's going to be fine. Though. Yeah, I agree. But that's how they're going to, the spin team is going to work on that aspect of it.
But a good spin team would have done exactly what you said earlier and come out right away and said, listen, I apologize if it's a little hard to understand, if I'm a little raspy tonight. Within the last few days, I've caught this, whatever it is, throat cold or whatever you want to call it, whatever the best wording for it is, and just get it out of the way. And then it is what it is from there, right out, address it head on. That way it's not like people speculating, oh, is it the flu? Is it COVID? Is it this? Is it that? Now you got all these idiots that are going to be speculating. And I don't know. It just, there was there's a few things that we have said just alone in this conversation that would have helped Joe Biden's night a lot. Even with the throat. Right. Even with that, working against them.
Exactly. I also think, they're, like I said, they're going to draft stuff up. The right wing are going to be dancing a jig for the next week until Trump gets sentenced. And then it's going to be, a fire in the belly moment for them. He'll probably have a big fundraiser after he's sentenced to 4 years plus, and then but it'll be held in a bait. Right.
But just get ready to see that clip of Joe Biden's first flub, that first bad one, over and over and over until you're sick.
But you're also going to see, you're also going to see like Trump stuff, like we had H2O and a certain kind of dog, and the golf stuff's going to be
sweaty
played
lip
by everybody. Because they're like, these two guys are arguing about a golf swing. Now, I personally think that, Biden knows that's a dig at Trump. And so bringing up his own golf score distracted Trump even further. He was still going back to it,
when they shut him
later.
up. Right.
Yes.
Right.
So I can
But
see
he
why
had him with the
Biden
bag. He's got him with the bag thing. Like, I'll play you any day. You just got to carry your own fucking bag. Just shut up at that. You know what I mean? I feel like that's a good comeback to whatever Trump has to say. And we all know Trump doesn't carry his own bag, so it has extra meaning for people that actually know what's going on. And like, again, he fed into, I think he fed into it just a little too much. I was kind of holding my hand over my face when he's like, yeah, as vice president, I got my handicap down to 6. Like, who gives a shit? Like, I don't care if you could outdrive Donald Trump right now. I don't give a fuck.
Right.
The country's running smoothly. We are the envy of the world, as he said tonight. He said tonight again that there are multiple fucking presidents all over the world in huge countries, in wealthy countries that would, in a heartbeat, trade places with Joe Biden to be able to have the problems and the opportunities that we have in this nation, as Joe Biden said tonight. So,
and his successes. And I think that's, when you get, there will be, in the boil down after the kerfuffle about him brain farting in the beginning or his stutter. And again, a lot of it, they will talk about how he's got laryngitis or something like that. He specifically like has a throat infection, and they'll say what it is because he clearly does. He's clearly hoarse. And I would argue from either like all the shit they've got going on, plus he's prepping at Camp David, they're like, he was probably talking way too much. The other thing I would say to all the public speakers out there, that whether you have acid reflux or not, if you have a big speaking engagement or a singing engagement, a little bit of an antacid before your prep session will do a lot, because as you speak a lot, you will toss stuff up, whether you have acid reflux or not, and it will eventually eat away at your vocal cords. The more you're talking, the more that will happen. And as you age, you will have more of that. That's why people get raspy voices. It's why Alex Jones sounds the way he does. He's got permanent acid reflux and he talks constantly. So that's a thing you have to be aware of, which, again, I don't know how, like at this point, I don't know how much with all the shit that's going on, how much you can tell Joe about stuff. You can go, hey man, this is what you need. And Ron Klain, obviously he's on the phone with him a lot. There are a couple of guys he talks to. You're going to see James Carville going, that's not fucking.
They brought Ron Klain in specifically to help him with the debate, as opposed to, I forget what the other guy's name, but he just, I'm surprised because I had heard that they brought Ron Klain in to see that it kind of went in the direction, strategically at least, not how it came across, because obviously they have no control over how Biden actually performs out there, but at least strategically and what we could actually tell from looking at it and what he said in the tweets, putting it together, and how it was supposed to kind of go if everything went according to plan. You know what I mean? So just I don't know. Just there's a lot to in closing. What do you think people should kind of take away from this, and what's important, what's not important? And
I think you're going to see a lot of sliced up pieces of this from both sides. All of Fox and Gutfeld and all those people will be playing the fumbles of Biden for weeks and weeks and weeks, along with shots of him stumbling, going upstairs, and that kind of stuff. It'll be along those lines. There will be a huge conversation that the Democrats are thinking about swapping somebody out. The spin people around Biden are trying to figure out a way to nullify that talk as quickly as possible. Because again, like, it's obvious to me he has a sore throat, and they couldn't punt it because it would look, some politically how it looked. They go, yeah, we want to do it this Wednesday, but we'll do it next Wednesday. You can't do it like that because it's preset in this date ahead of time. So it's just, you get what you get. Trump ultimately, though, like I said, if you look at his performance, his voice was on his side. He seemed, younger than Biden in this regard, but made as many, if not more, weird, blathery mistakes
in less
as
sense.
Biden did, just louder and effectively, And there were a bunch of weird things that he said that didn't go anywhere that deserve a lot of attention. And I have no doubt that I'm going to go through the whole thing. Like after you and I beg off, I'm going to go back and start from scratch and go over the whole thing and watch it again. And just go through what I'm seeing and talk about largely. I think there's some of what we've already.
God bless you. Watch that all over again.
Yeah. Hey man, that's how we do it. like confront it head on. I
Well,
don't
I mean,
care.
again, there are subtle things, especially while you're running a live stream, that you will pick up on the second go around and the third go around or whatever it is that you definitely, because I tend to, even if I catch a clip of my show, I'll see something that is like, oh, like that actually happened. Like, I don't even remember that happening. Like, you know what I mean? I'm the one running the shit. You know what I mean? So it's like, so there are probably things that I've missed and little nuances to it that I haven't added into my, little synopsis of what happened, but just the major things that I've seen, I think that we lost in one regard because we had an opportunity tonight to make a fucking slam dunk. We had the ball was on the tee. There was the ball was right up by the hoop, waiting for Joe Biden to slam dunk it with his achievements and Donald Trump's shortcomings, which there are many.
Right.
So just I'm not saying Joe Biden lost. I just don't think we gained as many points as we should have or could have in with all things considered.
I think what you're going to hear from a lot of people is you're going to hear a lot of independents bitching about how we don't have a really good choice in this election and blah, blah, blah. That'll last about 3 weeks because those very same people, the people who would be moved by the fact that, Trump's full of shit and Biden seemed old, are going to make their decision a week before the election where, arguably Biden is back to his spry self or he isn't. And that's something, that has to be dealt with, in terms of addressing that. Right. Or that he just has to, modulate expectations about, I'm not a public speaker. This is not about my, orator capabilities. This is about my effectiveness in making decisions. And
I actually wrote that down somewhere, Hal. Like I was going to think when I came on before of what Biden should come out and talk about. And I had that written down somewhere of being like, listen, you're not electing me because I run the fastest mile. You don't elect me because I'm the best on a BMX bike. I'm not a professional stair climber, but look at my accomplishments. Does that matter? None of that matters. Look at what I've done for this country. Look at where we are in the standings as far as globally, and that should speak for itself. Yes, I'm on an age. Yes, I don't speak as well as I used to speak as well as I used to. I don't run as fast as I do as I used to, and I don't the way I walk.
My decisions are sound.
This goes along with your, going at it head on type of thing with the voice. The more you come out, it gives you a human approach too. Because how many of us know a boss or a coworker that's come to work being hoarse or had to speak at a meeting and they didn't sound perfect? Or how many times have you had to done a live show where you're hoarse from the live show the night before, or anything like that? Or how many times have you people at home fallen, tripping going up the stairs? I mean, I do it twice a day for Christ's sakes, and I'm 38 years old. You know what I mean? So it's like we can't use these as takeaways as much as we know that I keep saying optics, as much as we don't like it, is a huge part of the job of the president of the United States. It's a hugely optics focused position. You know what I mean? As much as we don't want it to be. So the more you can combat these things head on and know what people are saying and know that if people have a problem with your age and the clips that are being shown around, to say, listen, yes, fine, I'm on an age. I have no problem with that. I don't speak as well as I used to, and I probably didn't speak well when I was younger. So I can understand where you're going with that.
I've always been a gaffe machine. One of the things is, I've had I have a speech impediment all my life, and I've always been a gaffe machine. So these kind, but he killed in the debate against Paul Ryan. He's there were he's definitely got the skill. He had the skills at one point to deal with these kind of things. The problem is who he's dealing with Trump is such a bizarre alternate entity, and he's great at dealing with him in terms of policy. He's still flustered by that too.
I'm surprised. He still gets surprisingly flustered by Trump's lies. And, like you can see when Trump's saying something and it's just an outright lie, you can see on Joe's face, he looks to his, I don't know if he's looking to his people or he's looking to, that's just where he's looking to the moderators. And it's just the way that the angle is on the camera. But, you can see a few times where he's like, I think he was talking about, Trump said he brought down the deficit or something like that. And but you can tell Biden was like, it's weird to me that he still doesn't have a direct way to deal with knowing that a lie is going to come out, instead of being so shocked and surprised every time that the guy's like, he's not actually being a real politician this time.
I think there are two things that they talked about, and this is probably a Ron Klain note, and I'll leave it on this, is that I think Ron Klain said people like it when you kind of grin at when he's full of shit. and then they're outraged at what he's saying. So show that you're outraged too. Don't be afraid to look over and go, what the fuck? The problem is when you or I look at somebody and go, what the fuck? We look like young people going, what the fuck? He looks like, where am I? And that's just what you gotta be aware of. Same thing with Trump. You know what I mean? Trump looks like a fucking toddler when he thinks he's looking tough or he's interjecting, when he's going, like,
he does the shoulder sway, where he does the shoulder sway. He thinks he's looking.
Yeah. So I'm curious to see if on the second watch, if people feel as bad about it, because I think people put a lot of weight on it as well. There's certainly, like, again, a couple of the flubs that were a big deal in the very beginning. And again, Biden's voice is the primary thing that, again, could have been addressed right out of the gate. If he'd have just said, excuse me, I have a bit of a sore throat, that would have done it. That's all you had to do.
There's really no welcoming and niceties at the beginning either. You know what I mean? No, how do you do or anything. It was straight into the questions.
Right.
No, how you doing?
That was also very, very odd, which also, when Trump's, like angry kind of energy gave him a leg up in that regard in their response. So we'll see. Anyways, I'm going to live stream the whole thing again right now so we can go over it, the whole thing again, instead of just snippets and stuff that people will see. And I will, we'll check in together. And at some point, you got to come back on my stream, brother, at some point.
Oh, absolutely. I'm trying to, at some point, have a lot more free time to go on your stream a lot more without saying too much.
I love that idea.
I'm hoping in the near future. So I appreciate you hopping on. Thank you for taking the time out. I guess my second time watching it will be as a member of the Hal Sparks chat. So thank you, Hal.
Cool.
I appreciate it. Thank you so much. Enjoy the rest of your night, and I'll see you soon. Thank you.
Okay.
Later, brother. And there he is, Hal Sparks. Let me get rid of his name, even though it probably helps my stream to just keep it up there because he is just such a fucking brainiac, and he's such a good guy. I'm going to go back here, bring the chat up. How you guys doing? You hanging with me? Treva, I think Boston Brian won this hands down. Figures, my most popular stream is when I don't say anything. That show really how to accept that, to tell you the truth. I don't know how to take that. The most popular stream so far as numbers watching concurrently, I would say. It's the one where I just shut up and sat back. Great. Thanks, guys. I appreciate you. Until next time, I'll see you guys Sunday for another episode of Blunt Politics. I'm Boston Brian. Thank you so much for watching the debate with me. Make sure you like the stream on the way out, share it, think about becoming a member, patreon.com, all that fun stuff, Venmo, all the fun stuff. Thank you so much to everybody, all the mods. You guys rock. You're all rock stars. I appreciate you. Everybody else in the chat are fucking fantastic. And thank you so much for spending your evening with us right here at Blunt Politics.
What? Never fight uphill, me boys. Never fight uphill. They were fighting uphill. He said, wow, that was a big mistake. He lost his great general. And they were fighting. Never fight uphill, me boys. But it was too late.